You may know them for their wood glues, but did you know Tightbond also has a complete selection of construction adhesives? Designed for a variety of applications, Tightbond's adhesives make any building or home improvement project a breeze with their high-performing and durable formulas. These adhesives are trusted by the professional, providing squeak-free subfloor installations, long-lasting retaining walls, and even fastener-free feature walls. Check out Tightbond's construction adhesives at tightbond.com, including their newest award-winning adhesive, Tight Grab Plus. So last week we teased about a tools-only content focus in our podcast, and the time is here, and let's talk briefly about how this got started. So we got an email from Wyatt, and he wrote, "Hey guys, having finished a few recent projects, I've been cleaning my garage, reorganizing and upgrading some tools. One was a Stealth Sonic DeWalt vacuum. The new vacuum was so quiet it sparked me to dig into looking for a quiet air compressor. At this point, my friend brought up a good point. He only uses his stand-up compressor for filling tires every now and again. Growing up, my dad used a lot of air tools. However, it seems in this day and age, the battery tool reigns supreme. I only have a small stand-up compressor myself, so if needed for a nail gun, and I have to cart it where I need it outside the shop. This sparked my interest in a battery-powered nailer. What are your thoughts on battery-powered nailers for your average homeowner? And I'd also like to hear your thoughts on the transition away from air tools when it comes to grinders and impact drivers." Or impact wrenches. I'm still in double digits for the podcast. Early on, you did an FHB podcast on tools. A more modern podcast on tools would be great too. I imagine technology has improved since you last recorded a podcast on the subject. Thanks very much, Wyatt. Okay, since Wyatt asked, let's start with cordless nail guns. First, a quick vote. Mike, yay or nay on cordless nailers?
Let's qualify it. Finish nailers or framing nailers?
Yes.
Yes for finished nailers, no for framing nailers, primarily because I need to have something that recovers a lot quicker when I'm doing sheathing operations.
What do you think, Grant?
Yes for finish nailers, and half yes for framing nailers.
On the finish nailers, it's an okay, but framers, it's not going to be up to the job. Interesting. Well, I think that's a probably pretty good evaluation of what's going on here. Let's talk about the positives. Of course, there's no hose to trip on or manage, which I think is probably one of the greatest frustrations of a pneumatic nailer. The convenience of setup, you don't need the compressor, you don't need to roll out air hoses, you take it from your truck and go right to work. What am I forgetting? What else, guys? What are positives of the battery platform nailers? That's definitely a downside. Yeah. Yeah. Grant, Mike.
For pickup work, the cordless framing nailers are great. If you got to go, if you're a remodeler, and you're just going to be doing some, a shot here and a shot there, the cordless, you can't beat them. Even on a framing job, we have both. The pneumatics and the cordless, because you've got to go hike up and work on a dormer. I'd rather have the cordless rather than the hose, because of just hauling the hose up and rooting. You think about crawling up a ladder or crawling up through an attic to get out to an add-on dormer, to wriggle that hose behind you the whole way is just a hassle. Cordless, no brainer.
Yeah, that's I think the greatest attribute. Negatives, of course, Andres mentioned the weight. I would add cost. Very expensive compared to a pneumatic nailer. I did a little research yesterday, and currently you can buy a Metabo 3-nailer kit for $200 that includes an 18-gauge brad nailer, a 15-gauge nailer, and an 18-gauge stapler. And an 18-gauge brad nailer with a 2 amp hour battery, by my guess, with a name brand, starts at $150 and goes to over $300, depending on the quality of the nailer and how many batteries are included in the kit. So you're talking 2-3 times the cost. And I don't know what the modern pneumatic nailers are designed to how many nails they're designed to fire. But, in the early days, they were made to fire 1 million nails or 500,000 nails because they came from industry. So the things would last forever. And then they were meant to be serviced for a $20 or $30 O-ring kit. And then it's ready for another, cycle of hundreds of thousands of nails before you need to do it again. So it's hard to argue with the convenience though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Grant, what do you have in your quiver? Do you have battery and pneumatic versions of all these nailers, I'm guessing, with your work?
Yeah, I run both. So I my thoughts on this is, and maybe for a homeowner, is you might want to consider pneumatic versions of some of these finished nailers because you can afford the loss and convenience to gain the cost. So like you can buy, a whole setup and as Mike can probably attest, you're on a trim job, you're trimming out a room with some windows. You might have an 18 gauge, a 16 gauge, a 15 gauge, a 23 gauge pin nailer all out at the same time. If you go pneumatic and buy like a quiet compressor, like I have a little Makita quiet compressor that's a plug into the wall and I love it. It's a workhorse. And honestly, if I'm trimming anything more than one room, I'm running pneumatic anyway. And the reason is, I can get all those nailers. They're smaller in form factor. They're lighter. They're faster. And I can get those for, what one or two of my Milwaukee battery operated nailers cost. Now, with that being said, as a professional, I love my Milwaukee battery operated finish nailers. And I use them quite often, but that's because I'm worried about production. I'm worried about getting things done, the convenience factor of it. If I was just in my own house doing projects, I wouldn't put as much premium on that just for the reason of their cost. That's on the finish side. On the framing side, as Mike said, I love a pneumatic framing nailer, coil nailer. You can't replace them for any large scale framing. You have to run pneumatics. But for pickup, punchless, framing out a basement, things like that. I started with the Milwaukee framing nailer and I sold it. It was way too heavy. I run a Pasload impact or impulse gas combination nailer. And I love it. I love that nailer for small stuff. It fits in between joists nice to nail blocking. You could toenail with it. But anything more than, framing up a couple of walls inside or anything like that, I'm pulling out a Pasload pneumatic nailer and a Bostitch coil gun.
I'm glad you brought up the gas nailers, Grant, your Pasload Impulse specifically. I've heard complaints that they're unreliable in cold weather. They're also way smaller than a battery framing nailer in size and weight. Have you had trouble with these things? I heard if they sit a long time, they're unreliable.
So the key with them is to clean them. And Pasload gets very good directions on how to take them apart, clean them. They have a special cleaner you use. If you keep them clean, I have never had an issue. They do also can struggle in cold weather for sure. Like we're talking like in the teens, they can struggle a little bit. But if you're in indoor remodeling, the temperature's usually not a problem. The other thing that some people don't like, and I could agree with, is they do leave off a pretty good fume. They kind of like give off a noxious, like butane kind of fume when they fire. So, that some people could be sensitive to that. Especially if you're going to be nailing walls together for 8 hours straight using that, just blowing nails through it, that could probably get irritating after a while.
Mike, I'm guessing you remember what an incredible innovation that tool was when that came on the job site.
Yeah, we adopted them back 30 plus years ago when they first came out, when they used to be gray colored before they turned to the orange color. And the batteries needed charging every 15 minutes, but we still liked the convenience of the, no cord, climb up on a ladder, go do whatever we needed. We had roofing nailer, finished nailers, framing nailers, just for the purpose of the convenience. We didn't use them all the time, but when you had a framing crew, it was worth having one or two of those cordless guns for a crew of like 6 or 8 because not everybody had to have them. But when we were framing with, regular framing, everybody had their own nailer, pneumatic nailer, as we're working through the day. But yeah, those PAS loads came out in I think 86 or 87. A lot of people don't realize they've been around that long, which is why there are a lot of other brands now that also use that same platform of a gas combustion type of drive system.
I've seen way more DeWalt cordless framing nailers than Paslode impulses for the last few years, because I think the hassle of having to have the gas and maintain these is oftentimes not worth the effort, especially for pros who need to work reliably quickly.
And one thing, like with the DeWalts, is they're a flywheel, so they have like a ramp up time, which some people like or don't like. And that's one of the reasons I went to the Milwaukee, which is like a nitrogen cylinder nailer. But I'll tell you, the Milwaukee nailer is unless you're a power weightlifter or want to be very sore at the end of the day, I couldn't see using it all day. It's too heavy. But it's amazing. And it's, as I said, and I've used a DeWalt. One of my buddies has a DeWalt framing nailer, a 21 degree cordless, and I like it. I mean, I would probably recommend that over the Milwaukee if you want to go battery route. But I saw Paslode just came out with a new, it seems like every 2 or 3 years they come out with a new gas nailer. And I saw the new one can bump fire finally, which before it was never able to do. So now they can bump fire off their cordless nailers, which I think is a nice add-on.
I'm going to ask our listeners to weigh in on this. What would you tell Wyatt about nailers? Should you buy pneumatic or cordless? Is it vary by interior or exterior work? I'm going to ask you all to weigh in on this, because I think the crowdsourcing will probably steer Wyatt in the better way. I would say you need all these nailers, gas, battery, and pneumatic, and because they're all perfect for different things, and I have the room to keep them. So,
One thing I add on that is, maybe 3 years ago, I bought a Senko 21 gauge nailer, which is between an 18 and a 23. It's like I can't remember the exact name of it. It's not a brad, but it's not a pin. It's in between. And I use the heck out of that, and they don't make that anywhere cordless. So that's one of the reasons, like if I'm trimming anything or if I'm in my shop, I'm running air hose, because I like that nailer for a lot of things I do. And I just like, my go-to brand for pneumatic finish nailers has been Senko, and I just like the way they feel. I like the way they run. So, and they're lighter. So it is, I guess, to wrap up my thoughts to why it is, if you can afford both, great. If not, I'd probably lean towards pneumatic first and then add cordless later.
I'd say if you can't afford both, get a second job.